All right, hey everyone. I think there's been a bunch of people waiting for this kind of interview because I think for most of you in the community, this is your first time that you've seen Professor Bernard Schultz before. You know, he's been talked about a lot. His research has been talked about a bit at a high level from myself and a few others as well. Well, here he is, and I wanted to introduce him to you. So he'll be talking a bit about his background, what he knows, his like expertise, and what he's like looking to do at Phantom, specifically also related to questions around, say, like quote unquote the Phantom virtual machine or the FTM that we've kind of seen a lot across social media and the community. So just a little background on Professor Schultz. I first met him in 2016. So I had to do a major software research project that later turned into a thesis, and I was interested in blockchain and smart contract at the time, and very fortunately, he was also very much interested in applying his like expertise and knowledge in programming languages to evaluating smart contracts. So I joined the team of 3 people, and it was an incredible experience. I learned a lot about very technical stuff to do with smart contracts, and also got full credit towards my degree. And he really also helped me out with my thesis in the final year in 2017. So this is Professor Schultz, everyone.
Hi, Michael. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, I appreciate it. I obviously know quite a lot about your background, and so do some people in the team. But could you kind of like describe for the community, who you are, your background, where you've been, and what sort of like experience you have, and how you basically came to like this position with me on the call now?
Okay, Michael. Well, I'm a professor at the University of Sydney. I live in Sydney in Australia, but I'm not originally from Australia. So I grew up in Austria. I studied there in Vienna, did my master's and my PhD degree, worked a little bit there as an assistant professor in Vienna. And since 2004, I became an academic at the University of Sydney. In the meantime, as an academic, I was able to take some sabbaticals, and I was involved in setting up research labs in the country in Australia. So I was setting up Sun Microsystems labs with one of my colleagues in Brisbane here in Australia, but also I worked for Oracle Labs some time. And I sort of, I'm an Australian academic, looking after students. That's sort of a big chunk of my time, but also doing research and doing administration at the university. Occasionally, as academic, you get time off. It's called sabbatical or leave without pay. And I was able to take off time for Phantom, so I will stay with Phantom at least 2 years, and I'm really looking forward to this time working with Michael and all the other members of the Phantom team. That's sort of how I came to Phantom.
Amazing, yeah. And so Bernard, I've been talking to him for quite a few months about the research that he was doing, because we had previously given a grant to his programming languages team at the University of Sydney to basically conduct a lot of research into how to make executing smart contracts a lot more efficient and safer, essentially. And so after a few conversations at Phantom Foundation, we managed to convince him to join us, and he actually began this month, a few weeks ago, on the 1st of May, as our Chief Research Officer. So he will be in coordinating very closely with Quan, who was actually a former PhD student of his, to really turbocharge specifically how to make smart contracts a lot more efficient, or quote unquote, like what we call the middleware stack. So that's the stack in between the consensus layer that confirms transactions, and also the application layer that consists of APIs and a variety of different services that developers use. So what Bernard will primarily be focused on is that middle part, which is all about, okay, how do you execute smart contracts in the most efficient way and also in the most secure way? And there's a lot of like technical work that needs to be done in order to complete that. So that's what Bernard is going to be on our team to help us like coordinate, and also help us with hiring, and to run a team to basically solve those kind of issues. So what I kind of found a bit interesting back in 2016 was like, this was kind of the early days of Ethereum. Not many people knew about it. There were a few people at university and across the that were really like, bullish on Ethereum, that were kind of seeing it as like a future, and that smart contracts were going to be the future of solving like a whole bunch of different problems. And there was one person at university that kind of like convinced me and a few others to also like have similar views as him. And so I was always kind of like curious, like, why were you yourself also interested in blockchain technology, and specifically applying your programming languages knowledge to evaluating smart contracts? Like how did you hear about blockchain? What really made you interested and really passionate about setting up a research group? In fact, probably like one of the first blockchain research groups, I'd say, in Australia.
Well, actually it was necessity. So I came back from Oracle Labs. I was there as a senior researcher for 2 to 3 years. And I came back with this open source project called Souffle. And Souffle is a logic programming language mainly there to analyze the correctness of programs. And we needed desperately applications for Souffle. And we had very excited students about blockchain in those days. And I thought, maybe we try this. We combine smart contract analysis with my previous programming language work, analyzing programs and proving the correctness or finding bugs in some ways. And so with the Souffle project, I thought it would be ideal to find smart contract as an application. And we had in those days 4 or 5 very enthusiastic students in the blockchain space, including Michael. And we started this project of decompilation. So smart contracts are very hard to read as soon as they manifest on the blockchain. And we needed a mechanism to understand what these programs, the EVM, is doing. And so we started decompilation work. So we had an initial prototype. We called this prototype Vandal. And with this Vandal decompiler, we could start doing actual static program analysis. And we found out that all these smart contracts in those days, and still there are, of course, they have problems. So problems related to correctness. So there are, in those days was also the big DAO hack. So that was a big issue. And we immediately understood that static program analysis is needed to find out about security issues in smart contracts. And that work led later to a much more powerful decompiler called Gigahorse, which is also implemented in Souffle. But after all these static program analysis work, we were also interested more in the systems aspects of blockchain. So this was work which we started with Professor Burgstaller at Yonsei University and his students. And here we were really interested in how the blockchain performs as a system, and especially the program execution. And we found quite surprising results, like that most of the time smart contracts wait for the storage system. So there's really some interesting bottlenecks we didn't expect initially. And since then, we have been working on implementation issues of programming languages for smart contracts.
Awesome, yeah. And could you also, you mentioned like the tool Souffle a lot in the conversation, and like, I kind of like know a bit about what it is, and same with like obviously the researchers on our team. But could you kind of describe exactly what this tool Souffle is that you're mentioning, and how you've applied it to evaluating smart contracts and identifying the problems that you've seen in the execution of smart contracts as well as security?
So Souffle is not, it's a language. It's really a programming language, and it was specifically designed to develop static program analyses. So static program analyses are basically programs analyzing other programs. And this language allows you to phrase this kind of static program analysis problems in a very efficient and effective way. And before, this was not really possible because these logic programming languages were very, very slow. But we used the most modern techniques in terms of implementing a language. And it has to do a lot with relational algebra and database research using implementing these logic languages. And we achieved this. And with that achievement, suddenly implementing static program analyses or bug finders, you can say, was suddenly possible. And you could analyze with these kind of implementation technique really in a very short time, very effective bug finders which can analyze huge amount of data in a short period of time. So, for example, we can, with the work of with Professor Smaradakis from the University of Athens, we can analyze a huge amount of data. So nearly all smart contracts in few hours, where before this would have not been possible.
Amazing, yeah, that's really interesting to hear about, and it was quite interesting to learn about how Souffle work. You know, it's a very, very complicated engine, and I would say I only know like you know, sort of how it works. There's a lot of like quote unquote magic under the hood that you and a few people actually joining our team like actually spend a long time working on, which is very interesting. And it's definitely like a very powerful tool. When I noticed that, you know, oftentimes you're like running against like a smart contract and you get the result like almost instant. You know, it did all the analysis really, really fast. So that's definitely like very interesting and powerful tool that we're going to be using at Phantom. Just moving kind of a bit onto another topic, what kind of got you interested in working on Phantom? Like, why have you decided to join us?
So I'm always intrigued by practice in industry. I mean, I've done this in the past. I have left university for short periods of time or even longer periods of time to work in industry and get inspired by the problems in industry. And I took them back to academia and then worked for longer time periods on them, write papers, do research with PhDs. And in this case, it's sort of similar. I'm really intrigued by blockchains and the complexity of blockchains, because at the end of the day, it's not just one discipline which is important in blockchain. It's cryptography, it's distributed systems, it's systems research, theoretical computer science research in terms of verification, and then we have a lot of software engineering challenges as well. So a lot of different disciplines are super important when it comes to blockchains, and that really excites me. It's the complexity of blockchains which is really intriguing. And specifically with Phantom, we have connections. So Kwon, the CTO, was my honor student in 2006, and Michael was my student as well. So we had personal connections. But beside these personal connections, what really excites me is building a research lab for Phantom. So that really I find a serious challenge, finding young, talented researchers and building innovations which bring the blockchain technology to the next level. I think that's really exciting from an academic viewpoint, and seeing also that you not just have academic findings, but also these findings are used in practice. They hopefully then will be fully integrated in Phantom's blockchain, and then Phantom will have an advantage to other blockchains because the latest innovations will be then in the Phantom blockchain.
And I think a lot of people in our community would be very interested to know, with your time at Phantom, what like objectives are you looking to achieve, like both academically, theoretically, but also practically in terms of like improving the performance of and security of, say, like smart contracts on the Phantom network?
So personally, I feel building the research lab will be for me a big challenge. But beside building the research lab, I feel there are a lot of technical challenges, and some of these challenges will be related building a better middleware, building better clients. So there we need to focus on various aspects. And because of some profiling work we did in the past, we see that, for example, the dealing with storage in smart contracts. So smart contracts are programs, and they need some data storage to store the values of variables and so forth. And the problem is that this storage is quite slow at the moment, and this will really hamper the transactions per second. And one of the first research objectives will be how can we build a faster and equally secure storage, how it's done at the moment in Phantom or other blockchains like Ethereum. And this will require a lot of experimental research. So we have certain trade-offs related to cryptography, to storage technology. And the only way to find the sweet spot in these trade-offs is to do extensive experiments and find out what is the best possible solution for the current program characteristics we observe in Phantom.
Awesome, yeah. And you know, there's been a lot of talk about, you know, a Phantom virtual machine or FTM. You know, I've talked a lot about the storage problems as well, because I think that is one of the most critical problems to do with the performance of smart contracts on any base like EVM based chain or smart contract based chain. But could you kind of like, but obviously like the work that you're focusing on and the research and development is a lot more than just like a new virtual machine or a new storage. It's actually quite a lot more complicated than that. And all of the like moving parts around like the middleware stack, they're all like related to one another. So would you be able to go into a lot more detail specifically about like, you know, each like part of the middleware stack and what you're looking to improve upon, and like what kind of like performance improvements can like can the user of a smart contract or a developer of a smart contract experience?
Yeah, so well, there are many challenges in the blockchain space, but you mentioned the virtual machine. So what we see in the current encodings of most of these blockchains, that we don't see efficient encodings, for example, of programs. So the program size of smart contracts is quite large because of a very specific encoding. And the question is, can we use some encoding theory to compress the data on the blockchain? So one of these challenges we see is that you need a very large hard drive to run a client. You need gigabytes, or if you have an archival node, you need terabytes just to run the current blockchain. And the data is increasing. It's just the nature of blockchains. It's never stagnating, the data consumption. It's always increasing. And the question is now, when we look into more the encoding side, is there a way to flatten the curve? Is there a way to ensure that the data consumption grows slower than what we have at the moment? So that will, for example, improve the network traffic between the nodes. So less data needs to be submitted to all these nodes if we have more efficient encodings. And that will ultimately also improve the transactions per second. So it's really a question about speed, security. There are these certain trade-offs we have in blockchains, and encoding, for example, is really one of these issues we need to attack with respect to the virtual machines. We were talking about virtual machines before. Virtual machines can be implemented very naively, and then they're quite slow, or they can be implemented quite in a sophisticated manner. And there are techniques like just-in-time compilation and other very sophisticated techniques. The issue is that we have here a very security mission-critical environment. And this means that if there are some bugs in the virtual machine, it has really very bad effects for the user of the blockchain. So quite often the bottom line is that the simpler the virtual machine is, the easier it is to prove the correctness. And these very sophisticated techniques may give you more speed, but you pay the price of security, and you want to really know what is the trade-off here. So what kind of techniques you would like to use to speed up the virtual machine and still have some handle on the correctness of the virtual machine. So there are some sort of experiments we need to do, and we need to understand this in more detail, these trade-offs. But yeah, so it's really exciting to do this because blockchains provide a sort of quite unique execution platform, and it's quite different to cloud computing or desktop computing. And this gives new innovations for the research community.
So what are like kind of the limitations of the EVM? Could you kind of describe how it's like designed, how it like executes smart contracts, and what are the limitations, and how are you thinking about like overcoming the limitations presented by the EVM, which is the major like virtual machine that like most smart contract platforms use, like Phantom, Ethereum, and there's others as well. Could you kind of describe that in a bit of detail?
So, I mean, again, there are different dimensions to this problem, but what we see at the moment is the biggest problem for smart contracts is really that the execution speed is very bad. And this mainly stems from the problem that storage is super slow. So 90% of the time, virtual machines wait for the ledger to produce the data they request. And this means whatever you do to improve the speed of the virtual machine will not really help, because the bottleneck is storage. In computer science, there's something called Amdahl's law. And the idea of this law is if you improve a small portion of the execution time, the overall speed up will be not so good. You want to find the portion, the most dominating portion of the runtime, and you want to improve that portion to improve the total speed of the system. And in the execution of virtual machines, it is really storage the biggest issue at the moment, and that is the most imminent problem to be solved related to the virtual machine.
So you talked about like a lot of like the performance issues with like, you know, the current smart contract stack that we have, like namely like storage and encoding, which relates to storage. But we've also talked about like how we can execute smart contracts more securely. I mean, part of like our like a lot of our research that we did, I remember back in 2016 and 17, was more focused around security and basically proving the correctness using static program analysis or symbolic execution that a smart contract doesn't have particular vulnerabilities. So in the new design of like a virtual machine and other parts of the middleware stack, what kind of security considerations are you looking to take into account that we can help developers basically write smart contracts that aren't going to be buggy, where they lose like a lot of money or tokens or other bad things that may happen?
So there are several aspects in that space. So we can talk about various layers of security here. So for example, when we use Solidity as a language for blockchain developers, there is no Solidity compiler which guarantees you the correctness of translation. So, you know, at the moment you have Solidity, the language on one side, and the EVM, a virtual machine language, on the other side. And this translation is not validated. It's not proven to be correct. So we assume it's correct because hopefully the developers of the Solidity compiler do a lot of testing, and through this testing, hopefully most of the issues are found. But there is no formal proof that this translation is correct. And it would be very interesting to understand whether some translation verification can be done so that we can prove that the compiler is doing what it is supposed to do. In the past, there were projects like this. So there was a project, or is still a project, called CakeML. So they use, it's basically a functional programming language. It's based on ML. And they prove the correctness of the compiler. But there are other compilers doing this. For example, there's a C compiler developed by a French research lab called ComCert, and they recently got an ACM software award from the SIGPlan, from the programming language community, showing the correctness of the translation. It's a year's effort, but because of these mission critical aspects of blockchain, I would say having a compiler which is proven to be correct is essential long term. I'm not talking at the moment, but long term it would be very good. Then there are other issues. I mean, even if you have a translator which is proven to be correct, you have also the issue that you need to prove the correctness of the virtual machine. And with that, you need to prove the correctness of the underlying storage. And so far, I'm not aware of any database project that you can say the blockchain is a database in some ways. I'm not aware of any project in the database community which used formal verification to show that data which is stored in the way it's supposed to be stored. So that is an issue. And then finally, the issue of security of programs is related to that the programmers write programs which are supposed to do what they're supposed to do. And these issues are related, can be sort of highlighted with some weaker notions of like static program analysis. They may have false positives, but there are other techniques which give you better results when it comes to verification. So there's a whole sort of different layers from the virtual machine storage up to the compiler to the program, which needs to be verified.
Okay, so there are a few additional people that are joining your team. Actually, sorry, can we just like pause it here at the moment?
Yeah.
Sorry, I don't know why the time limit is only 40 minutes. I thought it was going to be a bit longer than that. I just don't want you to get cut off like partway through an answer. I'm trying to upgrade the plan right now. Yeah.
Oh, this is Zoom. Oh, Zoom does these.
Yeah, but I already upgraded the plan before, which should have allowed it for up to like 30 hours. Yeah. So
let's see.
Yeah, I'm just trying to get it working right now, but it's not. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
Let's see.
Okay. Finally, I've gone through. Yeah, I'm really sorry about that. Yeah.
No, it's easy. Should we just wait to get the cutoff and then we do it, or just wait to see whether we survive?
So I just upgraded the plan again, and there's still like a countdown, which is not ideal. Yeah.
So when we did for teaching, you know, what I noticed is that recording on your local hard drive is so much better than recording on the web hard drive.
Yeah, that's right. So I'm saving it to my hard drive. Yeah.
Good. Because everything else.
Yeah. Yeah, I just had like kind of like a couple more questions. So let me. Would I be able to end the Zoom call and then Do you have enough time for me to allow me to download the existing file right now so we don't lose that content, and then start up like a new Zoom call, which will be like another 40 minutes, but we may only use like 10 minutes of it. Is that all right?
Sure, no problem. So we should talk about the team. So we should talk about Herbert, Vasuvi,
and just one other question I wanted to ask you was about, you talked obviously about your background and your area of research and your interests, as well as, the kind of work that you're looking to do at Phantom. But could you also kind of describe the team that we're onboarding, next month and the following month? Because we're onboarding 3 people at the moment, and these are people that you've had a prior relationship with as, as a supervisor to them, as working with them in industry as well, such as, for example, at Oracle Lab. So could you kind of describe these 3 individuals that will be joining us shortly and what they will be doing?
Sure, Michael. So we have 3 people joining fairly soon. I'm very excited about this. So we have Vasuvi Sotsong joining. She used to be a PhD student of mine, a joint PhD student with Professor Burgstaller at Yonsei University. She was a co-Dell student, so she did a PhD at the University of Sydney and at Yonsei University. And she visited us 2017, and she did interesting work with us more related to systems research and how programming languages can be combined with artificial intelligence. Later, after finishing her PhD, she joined SAP Research, and she decided to join us. So she's joining next month, and I'm really looking forward to work with Vasuvi. But besides Vasuvi, we have also Kamil Yesek joining. Kamil was my postdoc from 2020 roughly to 2021, and he has extensive experience through his postdoc work in the area of storage. So we have been working on substate storage. So the idea is to build a super fast testing framework for blockchains. And this work got published last year in Usenix, and Kamil was instrumental for this work. And he is joining in a month's time, roughly. He will bring all the knowledge to really accelerate the storage work for our project. And the final member of this initial team will be Herbert Jordan. And Herbert used to be my research assistant many years ago at Oracle Labs, when I was a senior researcher there and working as a visiting professor. And Herbert was working on the initial versions of Souffle, the programming language we discussed before. He has extensive knowledge of building compilers and building runtime environments. And so he will be very good building a new compiler for our planned virtual machine and also implementing the new virtual machine.
Thanks for that. Yeah, I'm really excited about this new team that's joining. I've known 2 of them before, Kamil and Vasuvi. I haven't actually met Kamil in person before, but like I have talked to him a lot because he has a lot of prior experience in this sort of area of research. So it's very much a continuation of the work that he was doing at the University of Sydney before he went back to the Czech Republic. And Vasuvi, I do remember her in 2017. She was part of your programming languages group, and she was very knowledgeable in certain particular areas as well, such as parallelization. I remember of like being able to like execute basically like computation simultaneously and make sure that it was like all in sync in the end. So I'm very happy to, and I haven't worked with Herbert before, but I've talked to him on several occasions, and you've always told me that he's very, very well accomplished. I think he's a very like he's a very like senior engineer at Google that and it's very great that he's willing to join us on this journey. And there's a lot of work to be done. You know, it's not going to be like 1 year done and then like everything is finished and then, you know, that's it. Like we all go home happy, right? Like this is going to be a multi-year effort, but it's going to be a multi-year effort, I believe, with a lot of accomplishments in between. You know, a lot of improvements being pushed, you know, to the network, a lot of massive performance improvements, security performance, and it will just keep going on, I believe, indefinitely, because there's always like more like research to be done. There's always more development to be done. We already kind of talked about, you know, one-to-one about like, and also with Quan about like, you know, 6 like areas of like research and development that we really need to focus on. But to me, that is a multi-year effort. And that's just kind of the beginning of the sort of work that we can be doing together. So I'm really excited about you joining and you also bringing, you know, people that you worked with before, very accomplished individuals to join the team. And yeah, I think the community will be hearing from you a bit more, and we'll probably have a whole bunch of questions after this interview goes live. So thank you very much, Bernard or Professor Schultz, for your time. I really appreciate it.
Thanks so much, Michael. Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks everyone, for listening, and you'll be hearing a lot more from him and the team in the future. Thank you.